Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the latest HR on the Offensive live stream. It's me, Chris Howard from Mace Partners, joined by Chris Kirby from our payroll practice. Chris, you all right?
I'm good, thank you, Chris.
You and I are going to have a little chat because we had a chat last week about the statutory sick pay news that had come out, which I'll let you explain in a little bit more detail what it is. But we had a really, really good, interesting conversation in the office, and I said we should have this as a live stream, maybe take 5 minutes of your time just to talk through the implications, because what we were talking about when we were chatting about some of the news stories that have come out is how it's being pictured as this could be problematic for some businesses. It's yet more legislation and red tape. But I think as you were pointing it out, and again, I'll let you go into the detail, I thought it was quite interesting, some of the points that you made. So for the people that are watching this live stream, can you just reiterate some of the details of it and then how it's going to impact as well organizations?
Yeah, of course. And I think we were talking very much about the perception and the negative connotations around cost and things like that, additional cost on businesses. And I think what I was saying is it's not quite as clean cut as that. Look, it may be in many circumstances, but we're talking about a very specific population. You know, it's people earning under a very sort of low weekly limit, weekly wage. And therefore, you know, when you talk about a lot of the businesses that will be impacted, maybe smaller businesses, it might be that they don't pay sick pay at all now, and therefore they're just going to have an additional administrative burden for those occurrences of 1, 2, 3 days in order to settle like the SSP. For bigger businesses where they may have a portion of the workforce who do, you know, earn at that level, it may actually turn out cost-wise to be a benefit, because actually from day one they can claim SSP back as part of their submission. So where they may have been paying sick pay anyway, and that was all company sick pay, a portion of that would now be sort of SSP. A lot will depend on how the legislation evolves and what's actually implemented. But that was the crux of our conversation, I think, Chris.
Yeah, and it's really, really interesting because when you think about the actual payment process of statutory sick pay, like the technical elements of it, I think the reason why I wanted to get you on the call, just to get your view on it as well, is I then ask you, how does it actually impact payroll teams? Because I'm assuming there's some compliance, there's probably some administrative stuff that needs to happen. So could you just give us a little bit of an overview as to how you think actually it might impact payroll teams?
Yeah, of course. And there's possibly a couple of answers to this as well. And I'll delineate just for ease between, you know, maybe smaller organizations who potentially do things a bit more manually and via instruction to potentially a provider, and obviously larger companies. And I think for those in the smaller sort of bracket where things may be done a little more, you know, manually or granular, I think the impact would, outside of cost, be potentially minimal because it's a change to a potentially a manual process. I think where even for those companies it is systemized, for want of a better phrase, and certainly for larger organizations with potentially a portion of the workforce in that bracket, the chances are they've already got SSP configuration that's, you know, standard and potentially needs to be extended, and that'll obviously carry with it the usual burden of, you know, config testing, not only testing the actual thing works, but making sure nothing else is broken, because it's going to lean on the same, you know, rates and the same balances and things that all the other stuff in the organization is bolted off of. So it's really just that impact of making sure not only the change works, but also nothing else is broken when it goes in. I think the one thing I'd add is just this is a prime example of it can be perceived as small enough that it can be handled manually. And it's very easy for organizations to take that approach once, and then something else comes along, and then before you know it, you're a year down the line and you've got 7 things that are done manually, and you've actually got an industry of that kind of thing. So it is important to get it right in line with the current process.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good important point. And probably just to wrap up today, one of the things that we're talking about and are talking about over the next few months is around the foundations of getting your payroll right and making sure you've got your processes right. And as Chris mentioned, this is one part of something that could be described as a manual process, but it all adds up. And so it's certainly worth talking to organizations that can help to support you in terms of mapping out what does good look like and what does great look like for us. But Chris, thank you very much. Just a quick check-in today. If you've enjoyed this, obviously let us know what you think. But also, if you want to have a chat with Chris or any member of the payroll team, then please feel free to reach out to them, connect with us on LinkedIn, follow us on LinkedIn, or connect with Chris. It's Chris Kirby. He hasn't put his name into the button at the bottom, but if you find Chris Kirby from Later Partners, he'll be more than happy to have a chat. Chris, thank you very much for a little bit of your time today.
No problem. Thanks, Chris.
And see you guys later.